If you're new here, welcome. My name is Tyjala Robertson. This video, I am going to share about a story, a testimony I don't think I have talked about on here. I haven't. And it came about because I was asking y'all like what type of videos or like what topics y'all want me to speak about. And someone asked me to share about how I came to Christ and life after that, right? So I'm going to share that as well as this testimony because it's a huge part of basically how it was after I made an intentional decision to come to Christ. It was spiritual warfare, y'all. So like crazy. And honestly, yeah, it's like you get jumped in when you really make a decision to be on the Lord's side, like to be in the Lord's army. So anyways, how did I come to Christ? So I've basically been a believer all my life, right? Like I was born into a family who believes in God, who, you know, just starting from my great grandparents I used to go to their church growing up. So I went to their church. My mom took me there. All of my family went to my great grandparents' church at one point. So I was very involved growing up. I knew God. We talked about God, Christ. I was, you know, in the choir, in praise dances, in plays, doing a little speeches. So if you are currently a church attender, you probably see like the kids ministry, right? I was in that stuff. It was a part of my life growing up. So I was always exposed to Christ throughout my life. But when I made an intentional decision to have a personal relationship with him was not until later in my life, when I was 18 to be specific. So in college. But yeah, so I've always known and believed in him, and I was baptized at 5 or 6, one of them. I was baptized as a child, and I remember that baptism, and I remember what I was doing. And I also went to a Christian private school when I was a kid. So like my life was surrounded by the gospel, and basically seeds have been planted. Seeds of faith have been planted within me, like instilled within me. Those values, those morals from, you know, biblical morals have been instilled with me throughout my life. And yeah, so I came to Christ. I accepted Christ, I guess you could say. I accepted, or I professed my belief in him as a child. But I did not take my relationship with him more seriously until as an adult, when I realized like, okay, it's more to it than just saying I believe in God. And so I think a lot of us who grew up Christian, or we grew up believing in God or identifying as Christian, we kind of have that lifestyle at first where we think like, oh, okay, yeah, I believe in God, and it stops there. And I want to say right now that it does not stop there. If that is where you are at with your relationship with God, there is so much more to it that he wants to bring you into. There's more to it. So yeah, there's a life after accepting him. So if you just stopped at accepting him, that's not it. I pray that he continues to take you further. However, anyways, that's how I lived my life. I identified as Christ, believed in him. It was no confusion. I knew who God was, right? But when I was in college, I went to a college that's not far from my home. It's about 30 minutes from my home. So I was living near college campus, but still had easy access and connection with my family. So I remember my mom was telling me about a lady who my mom met this lady through business, who had a fellowship that she would run within her home and invite women over. It was like a women's ministry, women's fellowship. She would invite women over, and so she invited my mom. So my mom had went to this fellowship at this lady's house a few times. Mind you, this lady is someone who's still presently in my life today and has been a big positive influence and mentor and guide in my life. So, but at this time, this is just a lady who my mom met through business, and she invited my mom to fellowship in her home with other women. And so my mom had then introduced me to these fellowships. She's letting me know, like, oh yeah, like you should come, because I guess the lady was a prophet. We had never, at least me personally, I had never experienced prophecy prior to meeting this woman, right? So they were telling me things of like that the lady had said about them that no one should know, right? Or like, how could this lady don't know us? And so they invited me to one of the fellowships, and mind you, so I'm a college student. One weekend I go home for the weekend and I go attend this fellowship with my mom and grandma, I think. So we're there, and the lady is basically leading the Bible study, and I was really drawn to what she was teaching because all of a sudden the Bible, how she was teaching it, it made sense. Prior to it, and this is kind of why I didn't really have a personal relationship with God, is because all my life it was like I didn't really understand the Bible. It just wasn't making sense. But it was like all of a sudden at this age, as I was reading it, decided to read it myself or try to read it myself again, it was all making sense. It's almost like the Lord opened my eyes. Finally, stuff made sense that I was reading in the Bible. Prior to it didn't make no sense. So it didn't hold my interest enough to keep reading and trying to learn and know about him. But at this age, it just suddenly did. And at this age, people, or this lady specifically who was teaching about the Bible, it made sense how she was teaching it. And so I'm like, okay. So I think it was making the faith more real to me. It was making it more real because it was now really making sense. It wasn't just this Christian jargon, right? But anyways, at the end of this, so she did prophesy in the midst of that Bible study as well to other people. She didn't say, she didn't say anything specifically to me, but I did see how she was saying things to other people, and those people were kind of like, just kind of taking it in. Anyways, she didn't say anything to me, so that she did not say anything to me where I felt like, oh, how do you know that? Like, you know. But anyways, we're closing out, we're praying, we're about to pray. And just very casually, she, turns to me and I forgot what she was saying, but she was just like making small talk because I was in college. She was like, oh, okay, and then she makes this comment and she's like, be careful of those Scientology colleges because, they're like really trying to heavily seek after college students or whatever, right? So she's like, be careful of them Scientology colleges, Scientology churches, because they're building those up and they're really going after, like, people your age, the college students. And so when she said that, in my head, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, I knew about the Scientology stuff coming up and stuff, but I'm like, I believe in God, I believe in Christ, I believe in Jesus. Nobody about to get me with no Scientology stuff. So I just kind of like brushed off what she said. I'm sure she, she's just letting me know it's out there. So basically, this is a time in my life. I'm 18. I'm like, the Bible is making sense. People's teaching about the Bible is making sense. I just witnessed prophecy. Like, this got to be real. This lady is saying things about people's lives that they're saying that there's no way she should have known. So obviously now I'm experiencing a supernatural something where it's like, this is more real than what I had understood, right? That's why I say, if you stopped at the belief in God and just like, oh yeah, I believe there's God, or I believe in Jesus, there's so much more in this world that you can like be coming to the knowledge of and understanding of as you continue to get closer to God. But anyways, so basically a baby Christian at this time, and I'm just like this newfound, like, oh my gosh, I really want to know about God. I'm like reading the Bible all the time now, got it everywhere I go. I'm so this fellowship I attended during the summer. Actually, so I said it was over a weekend. I went home from college. This was actually during the summer, so I was home and I went with my mom. But when school started up again, I returned to school, and my friends, so this is now my sophomore year, my friends, they came back and they had started attending church. Mind you, this wasn't what they was doing freshman year, and this wasn't what I was doing freshman year either. But they had come back and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to church tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, like y'all getting another look. Like y'all kind of, they kind of were starting their own thing with God as well. While back at home, I had started my thing with God. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So they were letting me know about that. And then they had Bible studies with their church that they did during the week. The church would come to the school, college campus, right? And so they're like, lady, you want to come to one? And I'm like, yeah, because I'm in this baby faith, or like baby Christian phase, where it just like I just want to take everything in Jesus, everything in God. So I'm like, oh, Bible study, yes, I'll go. So I'm going with them. I got my notebook, I got my pen, I'm ready to learn about Christ, right? And so the people that are leading their Bible study are giving really good, they're teaching the Bible in a way too, where it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And so I'm taking notes as what they're teaching. And I remember one of them was like, no, you don't have to take notes. We take notes for you. Like, it's okay. And I was like, no, it's fine. Like, I want to write it, because that's how I'm really going to take it in, is if I write it myself. So I'm like, it's fine. I'm okay with writing it. But they did let me know, like, you don't have to take notes. We'll give you the notes. And so I mentioned that because that's something important that I will try to come back to later in this story. So I'm continuing. So now, okay. I hope y'all are following this. There's so much with this story that this cannot be one video. So, and I don't want to make this one a long one. I want to try and make the main points of the story plain. And then if y'all want to know more, I can get into more details of what that actually went on. But basically, so me and my friends are in this stage where we are excited for God and to get to know him. So the lady whose fellowship I attended, I now started going to her church on Sunday. And when I went to the church, same thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is making so much sense the way that this pastor's telling this. So that's kind of how I really started intentionally growing in my relationship with God. It's like at a certain age or time in my life, all of a sudden, it was like my eyes are just open, ears up. You know how those who hear do not hear. I do feel like sometimes there's just a certain point where it just all makes sense, versus before it's like you may hear people talk about God and you just, oh yeah, I believe in God. But there's a point where it's like you are just, eyes are just open. That's the best way I can say it. Like everything is making sense to another level. So I went to her church, and this pastor, who ended up being my pastor for years and was the headship that I was under, as you guys kind of seen me grow in my faith over these videos. So I did end up continuing to be a member of this church for years until God transitioned me to the church that I'm in now. But anyway, so when I first went to the church, this lady's church, the pastor made a lot of sense. So then, you know, made me want to come back and learn more about God. And then, mind you, I'm still reading my Bible myself, all this, right? And then I still was continuing to go to the Bible studies that my friends, teammates, we were on the track team, were going to on the college campus, right? Now, something weird started happening where my friend would make this comment of like, the church that they were going to, who brought their Bible studies to our campus, right? She would make these comments of like, that they think, their church thinks that they're the only church going to heaven, right? And in my head, I was like, did they say that? She was like, no, I mean, they didn't say it, but like, they kind of imply it. And she kind of like brushed it off, kind of like joke. But I'm like, that's weird, you know? I don't know. So anyways, we're attending these Bible studies on our college campus from the church that my teammates go to. And some of our other teammates who were not connected to this church, they learned that we were going to these Bible studies, and they told us, like, you know, some people said this church was like a cult. And dang, I tried to make this short. I'm gonna try to wrap this up really quickly. And so you know, my teammates brushed it off because, mind you, they're already going to the church and became members of the church. I think they got like baptized and stuff in the church. Me personally, I wasn't members of this church. I was just I was sitting in on the Bible studies that my friends were having. I had my own church that I started going to, the one that I was introduced to by my mom, who met the lady who invited us to her church. But this church that they were going to, right? I started to get suspicious because I'm like, why would anybody say that? Why would somebody be saying it's a cult? And I remember my friend was like, no, so they didn't get to that point yet. So red flags start going off, or I wouldn't say red flags, but just suspicions start going off in my head about this church that was coming to my college campus. I remember too, like they would go on these missionary trips, the church, right? And they would try and get my teammates to go, and they're like, yeah, like they said they're going to Africa this week. Mind you, we're scholarship track athletes, right? We there to go to school, to get an education, and run track. That was our focus. Those were our priorities. And I'm like, y'all, we going to Washington this weekend. We got a track meet. Like, y'all can't just... And so I started, the weird things I started to see was like, they were experiencing this pressure from this church that no, like you need to go, like you need to go. And were expected to put everything in, and granted, and this is where it gets hard, right? Because yes, there is some level of, if God calls you to do something, being able to submit and drop everything, right? But that's the main point. If God is telling you to do it, what was happening here, my friends did not have a very strong enough relationship with God yet to be able to identify, to very consistently and accurately identify God's voice, right? So someone telling them that, no, you need, like, we're going to Africa this weekend for missionary trip, and you need to go, like, because, you know, there's sometimes God is going to call you. Y'all are telling my friends to go. God is not, so that is the main, yes, there are times where you drop everything when God has told you to do something, but that's the main point. Did God tell you? And so my friends' relation, that it wasn't strong enough yet where they could discern who is telling them what. And so they have these people who are teaching them, telling them that God is wanting them to do this. They're trying to be the voice for God. It is manipulation. It is manipulation. So okay, so at this point I didn't realize yet, right? Because again, I'm still baby Christian, trying to figure out, I'm like, what? But I knew something was weird about that. In addition to the Bible studies, they also had like these midweek group studies or whatever, where it was like a midweek service. And I remember attending one of those. And so they had a lot of things going on in the week. And so, mind you, there's nothing wrong with, a lot of churches have a lot of things going on. And this is why I think this has to be more than one video, because it aligns so closely with things that are okay, right? But it's the very details of things that will let you know, no, what they're doing is not okay. What you're experiencing is not of God. Run, right? I'm attending these Bible studies still just to, you know, because I'm interested in the Lord, to get to know Him. And one time, sitting in on one of the Bible studies with my teammates, the people who were running the Bible study asked me like, oh, lady, would you want to have like your own Bible study one time? Like my own focused one, right? Where this is mine and y'all are teaching me and focusing on me, getting to know the Bible and God, right? And so I'm like, oh yeah. So I finally attend my own Bible study with them. This is where it got extremely weird for me, because I got to personally experience something y'all are saying to me. I just don't feel right. I went to the first one and I was like, something is off. I went to a second one. And the second one, this is then where they're telling me, like, yeah, sometimes God is going to call you to, you know, go to this country or go to that place, and, you know, you got to go. And someone who's just learning God, right? Like, y'all are like, if God tell you, you got to go. Because basically they were trying to give out the impression, if you're not doing it, then that means you don't really love God, or that means you don't. And it's like, first of all, y'all, I'm actually just starting to get to know Him, and y'all making me jump ship to go do something for, granted, today, love and know God, but at this point, I didn't know Him well, and y'all are making me, pressuring me to do something for some one that I don't really know well yet, for Jesus who I don't know well yet, and I'm learning him right now. So y'all are telling me I need to go to here and to that missionary, and it's like, or you don't love God. And so there was just so much guilt that they were trying to instill within the people that they were giving these Bible studies to. So it's like, now I'm like, well, I need to do, in my head I'm like, well, if I don't do this, they're gonna think that. And it's that's why I say it's so much manipulation, because I'm like, one, God didn't tell me to do it. First of all, I would know, like, okay, I can't even get into it, because today my relationship with God, if God told me to do it, yes, because I love him, I would really want to do that, right? And I would aim to get that done, do what I need to do to get it done. But that's my relationship with him today. Like, there has been time that has passed, there has been it's almost like, this is how I can explain it. Someone coming to you and saying, yeah, no, God said you're supposed to marry me. And you kind of like, I don't know these men from a can of paint. And you telling me, and I'm not feeling the same thing. But if I say no to you, am I saying no to God? No. If someone is coming to you saying that, you need to get clarity from God himself. You cannot, because if that person is correct, right? And you, even if that person is correct, if you proceed, you have proceeded. Why? Not because of God, but because of man. You felt guilt tripped by man. You need to get clarity with God on what God is wanting you to do. And if you're still unclear, God is patient. You continue to seek clarity on God. What is you wanting me to do? So anyways, back to it. That's the closest example I can give. Like, you telling me to go and do something, I don't know you. So that's how it felt. I'm like, I do love and believe in God, but like, y'all telling me I need to go on this trip, and like, I have school, I have classes, I have track meets. Like, I can't just, and so much pressure. When you feel that much pressure, you really have to figure out what spirit is operating within this person, because it's probably witchcraft, which is manipulation, is witchcraft. Whenever you try to impose your will on another person, it is witchcraft. Whenever you try to control a person, it is witchcraft. Let's be clear on it.